We're so very excited to bring to you our inaugural panel discussion on upskilling and reskilling need of the hour. And trust me when I say this, we've got for you the best from the lot. Yes, indeed, a very diverse background joining us, our experts from the L&D industry and so much more. Moderating the spectacular panel is going to be Mr. Sandeep Kaul, Director, WhiteLight Consulting. And it is such a pleasure as I welcome our panelists right here. A very warm welcome to Ms. Alka Sharma, L&D Leader, GBS PepsiCo. May I also present you Ms. Prajakta Kanaglekar, Senior Director, Organization and Talent Development, Flipkart. A very warm welcome to Mr. Sabih Ahmad, Kidwai, Director, Talent Management and Learning Solutions, Schneider Electric India. May I also present you Mr. Jaladhi, Thakkar, General Manager, Learning and Development, Tata Motors. A very warm welcome to Dr. Rajiv, Sinha, Corporate HR L&D, Larsen and Toubro. And may I also extend a very warm welcome to Ms. Nagina Singh, Country Lead and Executive Director, Human Resources, DBS Bank. Let us look forward to this very, very engaging session. All thanks to our moderator and panelists. May I now hand over to Mr. Kaul.
Thanks, Isha, and thanks for this round of introductions. So, welcome everyone. So, let me start with this context is, I think one of the biggest conversations that's happening in the business world today is the fact that companies and the employees need to be more agile to the ever-changing world of work. And this is a conversation actually that was happening for quite some time. But what's happened is with COVID-19, that has just hastened it. And that has made it much faster than anticipated. And that has got employees and companies forced to adapt. And some of the companies that have really implemented upskilling and reskilling as part of the talent strategy to seize the opportunity in this future of work can really move forward. And this diverse panel today, we are from across industries. And the objective is to get their wisdom on how they are handling it, especially in the current scenario. Because it's not only that the world has changed, but also that they are dealing with employees. There's a remote hybrid model. So how are employees taking it, how are they responding it, and how they are addressing it. So our intent of this session today is to have some practical takeaways for the audience so that they can go and implement some actionable insight, idea from the panel discussion. So with that intent, let me just open the floor and start with requesting the panel members to share one example which captures some of the people, process, and technology aspects of any upskilling or reskilling initiative that they've rolled out in recent past. So maybe I start with Nagina.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks so much. Yes, and for those of you who would know DBS is at a very interesting juncture of their growth trajectory in India, where we've just about acquired Lakshmi Vilas Bank about a year ago. The two organizations are chalk and cheese. So we, as in DBS, the amalgamating entity is all technical, digital. Our banking is customer experience, whereas ELVB, erstwhile Lakshmi Vilas Bank, is all physical, where people go to the branches, interact with the branch manager, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of work that we are doing in terms of making the farmers, which is what the case is in ELVB, which is the branch people, and there are no such hunters. So nobody sources business in ELVB. So we are optimizing the organization ELVB and really upskilling and reskilling your branch operations people into frontline people. So that's being done through, of course, e-learning and the sorts, but also a lot on the job where we are cross-fertilizing people from DBIL to sort of teach those people how to source and what is the best way to source, keeping the customer satisfaction in mind, and of course enabling them with a lot of tech tools. So ours would be over a period of time a live case study to see how many people we'd land up upskilling, reskilling, A, because of the amalgamation, and B, because of the shift in the way we are going to go to market.
Sure, thanks. And maybe I'll come back because it's very interesting because DBS is highly technology driven bank and Lakshmi Vilas is a high intensity relationship bank in South, primarily in South. So it's a quite an interesting combination. Maybe we will circle back later to you, but thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
So Rajiv, what do you?
Okay, thanks Sandeep. So good that you asked that any one thing which we can single out So pandemic, of course, during the pandemic, so many new things we all have tried in the learning space. L&D actually has changed. I will see a sea change. Learning and development has seen. So typical, I will say that typical to any organization, we also has gone in a very big way in e-learning mode, virtual ILT, etc., which is very common to all the organization in this space during this 2 years time. But one initiative which we experimented, we piloted actually, which I think I can single out, is that we experimented that using technology in the field of coaching. And which is a very unconventional area, because coaching is always one-to-one kind of setup, and how to use technology in the field of the coaching part. And because the whole thought process behind that providing coaching using technology is the speed and scale. One-to-one coaching has the limitation. We can't go beyond a certain scale. Actually, a typical classroom or a typical session cannot take care of 20 or 25 people in a reasonable time. So we used that actually, and we experimented where we have selected a topic which is much easier to actually experiment, to pilot, and we use that in the L&T setup. Actually, a big number of chunk are coming in from the diploma colleges, and diploma colleges are spread across the country, and most of the diploma college, the language of teaching is not English. And when those people are joining L&T, they need to be at least to a reasonable level in this language. So we thought okay, let us put this coaching program for the English communication, and that too mostly focusing on the fitness for use. English communication, fitness for use in the technical setup. Basically, they are mostly the diploma holder or maybe the engineers. So we use that, and the whole cycle we have done. Okay, that we use the technology for that. And the batch size we actually achieved is to 300 plus batch size we have conducted for the 4-month long period. We have used that, and there is a lot of data actually we collected. The good part of that technology is a lot of data we collected to check the effectiveness of the training, how it is going. And so the data from the learner himself or herself, their immediate managers, their coaches, their HR person. So the multiple data sources, from the multiple data sources, we have collected the data about how training is effective or not. One is that, of course, the feedback part, which is very, I will say, the first level or the reaction level of the data. But we actually collected data on 4 parameters. That what is changed actually, whether the thinking aspect of the person is changed, the articulation aspect of the person is changed, accuracy aspect is changed, or his presence aspect is changed or not. So all these 4 parameters we have collected data on a scale of 1 to 8. Actually, we have collected from the different people, and that is pre the start of the program and the post 4 months, when he was in a continuous touch with one coach every day, 10-minute practice followed by feedback from the coach, and that continued for in between lot many other interventions were there in terms of conceptual learning. And at the end of the 4th month, actually, we have measured on these same 4 parameters before and after, and how much is improved from the multiple sources. That is the important part I want to say, because once the triangulation of data we are doing, the ability and credibility of data gets improved. So this is we have piloted one during this pandemic, actually, one program.
So one quick question on this I would want to ask you before we move forward is that when you do such large interventions using technology, one of the aspects, one is the analytics, definitely. Other thing, in a group, there is a lot of scope which gets generated for peer-to-peer learning. How is your experience around peer-to-peer learning?
So yes, lot of actually learning. So we used actually the aspect of gamification also, and the leaderboard also. For that, we use that aspects to create that sense of basically the game aspects. We brought that, okay, who is at the what stage, week after week. Every week we used to publish the leaderboard on the multiple parameters. And it was not exactly that every time on these parameters, these 4 parameters, but in between also some in between measures we have developed to create that sense of competition, to create that sense of some kind of motivation using the leaderboard. So that is the first part. And then there was a weekly, actually, there is a conceptual learning concept which we have introduced, where that was a smaller batch every week actually 4 or 5 batches we were running in a smaller group, not the 300 plus all people were coming on that group. So that there actually this is the group learning or the peer learning, collaborative learning aspects has been taken care.
Sure.
So as I said, it is a mix of actually technology, using technology and the human both, because coaching is especially the human aspects, whereas the technology is used for the data collection, effectiveness measures, providing a platform where one-to-one connect can happen on a mass scale.
Thanks.
So it's a combination of both.
Thanks for sharing that. And also, I would just like the panelists to ask, because a lot of our audience might be small and medium enterprises, because our panelists are from large companies, and they might have either global or resources at domestic level, which will give them access to roll out big initiatives. So do share examples which a medium-sized industry also could roll out, internally. So that would be helpful. So over to Prajakta. Hi, Prajakta.
Hi, Sandeep. So maybe let me start with a quick context, right? So a couple of points on the environment that Flipkart operates in, which will help bring the example that I am sharing to life. So Flipkart as an organization is in a very, very fast-paced, fast-moving, and continuously getting disrupted type of environment, right? Like, for example, just this year, there has been 18 billion of inflow into startups every month, 3 startups coming up with $1 billion valuation. So that is the environment we operate in. Our headcount has been growing almost 1/3 year over year, right? So it's very, very fast, increasing in size and scale as well. So that's the environment we operate in. If I were to bring an example to life for the audience listening in, I think the one that comes to my mind, which might be most relevant, is about how in L&D we've been marrying the L&D strategy to the business strategy very, very deliberately. So through our talent review process, what we do is we talk about what are the future capabilities that businesses are going to need to achieve their business strategy, and what are the gaps that they are seeing. That becomes the primary inflow into our L&D strategy. So the L&D team, as a result, works on interventions that are going to help the business develop those future skills, right, that are required. So one example of that I can pick up is, an intervention that we call Tech Marvel. This is specifically for our technology business, and it was about, the emerging technologies, because we are a technology-led organization, constantly staying ahead of the market, ahead of the curve, knowing the emerging technologies, leveraging them proactively is critical for us. So this was about creating awareness, kindling curiosity in Flipsters to explore and exploit those emerging technologies, right? So whether it is AI, ML, it's blockchain, it's IoT, it's AR, VR, these were some of the technologies that were under consideration. So we designed Tech Marvel to be self-paced. We made sure that there were elements of direct visibility to our tech leadership. So sponsorship for this program comes from our Chief Product and Technology Officer. The teams kind of have multiple ways in which they immerse themselves in these emerging technologies as part of the program. It's through self-paced learning, which could be MOOCs or other things. It's deliberate practice, which means that they take business problems and solve it. And there are communities of practice built as well. So the peer learning, that you were talking about, Sandeep, that we've consciously built as part of the construct of the program. The last piece that we've also created is the engagement with the learners, whether it is through gamification, it's through R&R, right? So those are the things that we created as part of the pilot that we ran for Tech Marvel. We had a lot of learnings through that, and those we implemented into the second wave. So we are now actually in the second phase of Tech Marvel. The best piece about this experiment and the learning through this experiment is that it is directly helping the business develop the skills that the business needs to succeed in the future, right? So that's the example, hopefully, that
no, that's useful. And actually, it was one of the following questions that I had in mind to ask you is, since you brought this thing about aligning yourself to business, what are some of the things that you do when, a lot of leaders, L&D leaders, are looking at to align with business? So what are some of the things that you do to influence, to ensure that actually the business needs are taken care of? How do you go through the process?
So multiple elements to the process. I think if I talk about the data side, because it's also about how the L&D team is ready to have those conversations with the business. It's about our preparedness as well. So the way we prepare from a data perspective is we have access to our L&D teams on themes that come up from our performance systems. We have access to the L&D teams on the future capabilities that are being discussed in talent reviews. And we also have access to themes that are coming out in functional areas or technology areas as well. So this becomes the bedrock of preparing before you get into a business conversation, right? Because you need to know what you're talking about. The second element is when you get into the conversations, you connect these dots and talk about prioritization with the business. What is it that is critical for the business to focus on? And that becomes part of a conversation at the beginning of the year for needs analysis, right? Through that, you then plan out your entire L&D strategy. So we engage not just with the top leaders, we engage with a couple of layers below as well, so that we are able to get a bottoms-up view of what's coming up beyond the data that we see. So you marry these two, and that's where you've hit gold, because then your leaders are your biggest sponsors, because they know what you're trying to do is basically to enable them to succeed.
So you have a set of analytics, and then you do a validation whether the
Exactly.
analytics make sense on the ground, because sometimes statistics could show a different picture.
Exactly.
Thanks for that, sharing that detailed thing. We'll move on to Alka to hear her story.
Sure. Thanks so much, Sandeep. I think at PepsiCo GBS, one of the things that we are working towards, as a unit, is to deliver a lot more value to PepsiCo as a business. Like with any GCC, anywhere in the world, I think the value and the codification of this value really boils down to a couple of things, right? How are we necessarily standardizing, optimizing, and transforming processes, which means that the organization is faster, stronger, better. That's what it boils down to. I think some key capabilities which really make a difference along this journey are along the lines of operations management, service management, continuous improvement, etc. Now, the context for our organization essentially is around the fact that we are about a little over 2 years in existence. Most of our workforce comes with some prior experience in a GCC. Now, that is a good thing. And also it poses a very interesting opportunity as well, because the context is not necessarily a PepsiCo context that they come with. So which means while if you have like 4 or 5 people in a meeting room, there, and I'm talking about, of course, pre-COVID, you could hear an ideal solution come in very different shapes and forms from 4 different individuals who come with 4 different backgrounds or contexts. So I think the one big problem statement we started off with, given our business objective of delivering value for PepsiCo from our perspective, was to really bake in the PepsiCo context very, very strongly, top down and also bottoms up. While typically any upskilling or reskilling will involve some form of a current state assessment, we essentially, to allude to Prajakta's point earlier, have also taken various data points into consideration. For example, what our analysis of the org health survey shows, what is coming up from our talent analysis and the kind of experiences they're coming with. What is it that the employees' aspirations are at a given point in time? What capabilities are they most interested in building? And mapping it back to which capabilities will make the most sense to build for our organization going forward. Given this, we initiated a certification program at the beginning of this year as a pure upskilling exercise for our leaders, who come with, again, a variety of mix of their prior GCC experience. The idea was to bring them together in terms of using a common language, a common goal, and also applying some of these skills to some very business critical future problems that they've already started applying these skills to solve. The second phase of this entire exercise is where we are bringing condensed versions of the same skills for our associate population, something which gives them a complete holistic understanding of what ecosystem are they operating in, what is the North Star that the whole organization is focusing on, and what will essentially get us there. So that's what we're doing here.
So I think thanks for sharing that. So in this current context where you're trying to standardize things, getting a common values across the North Star, the workforce has become remote hybrid for most of the firms. So how are you coping up with that?
Yeah.
Please.
I think some of these things are going to be common across, I'm sure, all the panelists,
Yes.
right? When it comes to leveraging as much of blended learning,
Hmm.
sharing the responsibility of development, through and through with our end users or learners. What also really works is, again, leadership sponsorship. That is a big, I think, push in terms of driving and really delivering on these agenda points. I would say essentially it boils down to three things for any of these initiatives to be successful, right? A trifecta, to be specific. One, where is the organization today, and what are some of the future skills we are focusing on? Second, what are the employee aspirations? And given, I think most of us work with a largely millennial workforce, what are some of those capabilities that they are the most interested in building? And that's where the value proposition comes from. And finally, from a HR, talent management, L&D perspective, what is our buy versus build strategy as a result of these 2 points? And eventually, I think it's all about communicating it over and over, not just through L&D, but through various other areas as well, like your town halls, leader connect, staff meets, etc.
So are you feeling any change? Because 2 years back it was in person, and now it's remote hybrid. So anything that you have made changes to the way you have started rolling out these initiatives in the current?
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting. Just yesterday, there was a similar conversation that that I was attending with a couple of leaders, and I think the belongingness with an organization that we are having to work extra hard on, to maintain that, to build that up. When you're in a physical space, you have all the insignia of the organization around you. If the workspace is collaborative, it shows up in the design. The workforce that's has joined us over the last year and a half. I think for them to build that belongingness, it takes a little longer. And if talent programs, L&D programs reflect that in terms of our larger value system and keep reinforcing that in our day-to-day communication, I think that is solvable, but it takes a little longer to build. That's a big shift.
So what I'm hearing is that it's possible, but it just takes a little bit more effort.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing that. So we move on to Sabih. Hi, Sabih.
Hi. So, well, I mean, the challenge when you're speaking after such illustrious people and when coming from such organizations is that everything that I could talk about my organization has already been talked about. So let me take a step back and share some anecdotes and some context of what is happening around. So one thing that I strongly believe is that the game has changed, and it is important for us to realize the shift in the game. I keep giving this analogy with the game of hockey. India used to lead that. India and the subcontinent used to lead in that game for many years, and what we were skilled were at dribbling and moving the ball around very skillfully. But the game changed. Hockey is no longer that dribbling. It is about speed. It is about agility. It is about strength and maneuverability of the ball as quick as possible. Now, this is exactly what has happened in the business and in the game of learning, as I call it. A lot of learning is democratized now. A lot of information, knowledge is already available and existing in the system. Our employees, of course, their attention spans are smaller, but then they're a lot more agile and aware and digital. Now, what we had to do and the organizations had to adjust to this was that we can't just continue the old ways of learning. And when I say old ways of learning, even if we had moved digital, it was just converting what we were learning in the classroom to a digital classroom, and that was not enough. What is required and what was required very desperately a couple of years back when we just got into the pandemic was the complete mind shift and shifting to a more digital and virtual way of learning. And that called for a lot of things that my colleagues here and my friends here are talking about in terms of making it virtual, digital, blended, bite-sized, all that. But then also making sure that we are partnering and reciprocating with the learners and considering them to be smart enough and agile enough, because a lot of things they already know. They already know through the system. They already are equipped, and they are using and should be using. So I think that shift took us a while, and took the industry a while to really come to. One thing that really helped us in this was the work that we did with the leadership team on shifting this mindset and really understanding the new tools, the new mindsets, and it reflected in everything that we do. Whether it was open talent markets that we initiated for internal employees to build their careers within the organization, find opportunities and grow, and shifting the onus to them. Whether it was learning, where the employees were to choose their learning paths on their own, and the responsibility shifted there, and what we provided them were appropriate tools and opportunities and AI enabled tools that would help them figure that out, or opening it up as career fairs within the organization where they could find relevant opportunities and also get to speak and have exposure to the leadership who could guide them and share with them what is expected and what kind of skill sets would be required if they wanted to build careers in those spaces. So a lot of opening up, a lot of rethinking in the way we were doing things helped us, and that's what has brought us where we are. And we really take a lot of pride in the fact that we've been able to really bring it to this level with the employees at large.
So, Sabah, can you just share a bit? Because earlier we had separate conversation where you had spoken about the open talent markets and how it is opening the world for the employees who are proactively skilling them with the right skill sets. And it opens a world of opportunities across geographies, across business areas. Like where you had shared an example of an employee in India having access to opportunity in Vietnam.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So this tool that we have put in place is a AI-enabled tool where all today, as of today, we have got around 80% of our employees who've got their profiles on it. And the profiles is not their experiences, but also aspirations for what kind of work they would want to do. The tool and every job, every opening and every project. And there's a lot of work that we are doing with the leadership and the managers in the organization to create a lot of bubble projects and assignments where people can experience. So if I am here in India and I, with all my experience in HR, have an aspiration to go to strategy, if there's a project anywhere in the world on strategy or an opening in anywhere in the world, I would get prompted that here is an opening of your interest, and the hiring manager would get prompted that here is an individual sitting in India who comes with this kind of experience but is interested in strategy. Would you want to connect and take this further? And that's how we've been able to catalyze a lot of such movements today, this year, and it's just a year, over a year that we have got the system in place. 30% of our vacancies in the organization get filled through this internal mobility and through the tool, the open talent market.
So how are the managers of these people responding?
They are getting used to it. So we've had all kinds of reaction, right from the extreme where they felt this is going to be a challenge to the business continuity, to the fact that okay, this is a loss to an individual. I've just invested on the, and by the way, we have removed all barriers. So it is not just about the experience, it is also about the number of years that you've put in the role. So there were a lot of debates that, oh, there has to be a minimum of 1 year and 3 years, and this now in this approach there are no barriers at all. So anyone can apply for any job at any point of time. And so managers are getting used to it. They initially had a lot of struggle, but the realization, I mean, the market is open. We are hearing about the great migration, the great resignation. So they would go on similar notices and after similar tenures anywhere else outside. So why leave it for others when we can have opportunities, and we do have opportunities internally. So yeah, managers are getting used to it.
And thanks for sharing that. So we'll move on to Jaladhi, who is from Automotive, Tata Motors. Hi, Jaladhi.
Yes, hi Sandeep, and good morning to all our colleagues here. So I think great. I was really amazed by the wonderful conversations, that our colleagues had. It's so richer even for us when we are there as a panel to hear so many diverse perspectives from each of the sector, each of the company, and I fully allude to what what Sabah mentioned. I think it makes it equal for all of us when we look at the change in context, that the recent few years have brought in. Automotive sector has been no different, let me tell you. So there are three major, I would say, external changes that have taken place. Sandeep, one, of course, the BS6 transition, which was actually moved very fast, and that is more in terms of the specification on the around non-pollution. Second was the whole transition to electric, right? That is again something which the entire automotive industry, be it Tata Motors or any other companies, are handling with. And third, of course, the biggest disruptor, which is COVID, which happened about 2 years back, and we are still kind of reeling under the effect. When we look at it from upskilling, reskilling, or even learning perspective, see, there are few things which comes when you look at large organizations. There are these external inputs which come in, which are, I would say, absolutely cannot be ignored. You have to make way for that. Second is also the internal culture of the organization. And let's say, for example, there is a certain way of producing or creating a product. Suddenly, the nuances and the features and specifications of the product change, right? So how do you deal with both these elements coming together? When we look at some of the focus areas, especially in the automotive space, I would say, four or five things have really captured the attention all across. So first and foremost, from, let's say, automotive as a productized company, it has transitioned into an experience-based company, right? The consumer experience, the how does the last mile consumer experience the product? That has become pivotal in the whole discussion. Second, it's about the connectedness of the vehicle, which means that how vehicles are connected. So people were talking about IoT, Industry 4.0. So these are some of the elements which are stepping in a big way. Third, I would say the concept of shared mobility, right? So when we look at the way people, consume travel, has changed very, very dramatically and very, very, I would say, in a very evolving manner. We were hearing more of, public transport more as shared mobility. It has actually come down to the retail market, right? And where it has been shared. Second is about safety. Since the vehicles have got personalized, the element of safety, the entire focus has really taken a great leap, a great momentum. Last but not the least, I would also say the whole transition from, let's say, a typical IC engine dominant market to an electric dominant market, right? Where the entire infrastructure or the construct of a vehicle is changing, be it buses, be it other commercial vehicles, be it our retail passenger vehicles. All of them have been touched by the electric evolvement. What also becomes very critical here is to see that when we design some of the learning and development programs, I think most of it was spoken by our colleagues, but I would say Tata Motors and even other automotive companies, they are also reeling under a transition that some of the functions of the company are highly kinesthetic, where it is really like a product which is shaping up, showing up, and then there is a push on digitization, right? So how do you really marry these two, and how do you really see that when you design your programs or when you upskill talent, both these are taken care of in equal proportions. So I think, let me take a pause. I think this is something which probably I would like to rest what I was saying and see if there are any questions, Sandeep, if you want to take any of these points deeper in the forthcoming conversations.
The industry that you come from, that's really reeling under quite a bit of disruption, because the electric vehicle, the whole thing itself is such momental change, not only in terms of the vehicle type, but also the number of parts, the durability, the lifespan.
Absolutely.
Just the whole business model will get revisited. And that also means that newer players should come and disrupt the complete model, which is happening. So we will, I think, because we have limited time, so we'll probably do. I first wanted to do examples because we are such a diverse individual set. Now let's go into popcorn style, and everyone can jump in as they feel. So some of the questions that was on my mind was, first was that there's young people joining in, and they want to find a lot of meaning at work. And I was seeing the panel, our average jobs, like, in your career, you would have changed 4 jobs. I was seeing, because some people in this panel have changed 2 jobs, and some have done 5. Extreme outer is 8, but average is around 4. So these people who are coming new between 20 to 25, they want to see meaning at workplace and purpose and organizational. What are some of the things that you are doing? What was that? Like they want to learn new things.
Sure. So, yeah, sure.
Go ahead,
Please go
Jaladhi.
ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, Sandeep, I just to continue on the trail that we had touched upon, and I think some of our colleagues did mention. So the whole art and science of L&D is, giving the learning back into the hands of the learner, right? That's the approach. So the space in learning, if I may put it in very simple words, is becoming very accountable, very agile, very personalized, and very customized, right? So the whole effort is to see whether it's a talent development program, whether it's a leadership development space, whether it's in the area of some technical or digital skill building. There are learning assets, and there are certification programs which are created, which are highly socialized, branded. So Tata Motors has an academy structure. So there are technical academies, functional academies, behavioral academies, and all this is provided, or rather in the process of providing more as a platter, right? What we have seen typically is when every year you have a good number of youngsters stepping in, good number of our management trainees, graduate trainees, engineers who step in. They would really like to take control of the learning in their own hands, right? And as Sabah was also saying, there is so much available, today. You look at MOOCs, you look at any of the other content providers. There is so much and more. It's always good to give them a platter. It's always good to give them that, hey, this is what the organization can provide you. We give them some tracks which they feel that, yes, this will be good in terms of not only my personal growth, but also in terms of my being more valuable to the organization. With this, then the choice is left to them, right? So once this is provided, let them make a choice of what they want to learn, how they want to learn, the medium of learning. As you said very correctly, virtual was kind of forced onto us, but now we are finding a meaning. So virtual has not. So while the things are going back to normal in some spaces, I would say the virtual has not gone. So now it has come to hybrid, right? So you have virtual also, and you have classroom. Both are coexisting. So I think this is what is primarily the expectation that we have captured so far, and we are trying to see that we give them the best of both worlds.
Creating a culture of active buying, so they
active buying.
Psychologically, they are more fulfilled in what they're receiving.
Absolutely. So 2 things: agility and accountability, both, right? How we can marry these 2 and drive it forward.
Thanks, Jaladhi. And Prajakta, you had a point.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back 1 month ago. I have a Gen Z in my team. We were in a storytelling workshop. He talked about a point where he was in 6th standard and he was practicing for a race. In that race, every time they were practicing, he would come first. When the final race was about to happen, right, they announced what the prizes were. And he actually wanted the prize that the 3rd person would get, which was a puzzle. That was his passion. What he ended up doing was he ended up running really fast, but paused or slowed down towards the finish line, let a couple of people go, and then went over the line. Right? And he was very, very happy because he got exactly the prize that he wanted. Now, Sandeep, for me as an individual who's also very competitive, I couldn't imagine letting go of a first prize, right, if that was within my grasp. And I think that's what we need to understand, right, as L&D professionals, as HR professionals, that every person's aspiration is unique. And how are we tailoring our processes so that our employees are achieving their aspirations is critical. And that is what I would love to kind of pick on what Sabih said as well, because we are going the same direction. So we began on a career development journey in 2020 in Flipkart, right? So very briefly, if I can tell you, the first year was about, we are a young company, right? So institutionalizing career conversations, building the muscle in our managers. Second year was about owning your career for our employees, building the muscle on how can you think about careers, how can Flipkart enable it, doing pilots around speed mentoring, all of that. The third year, which is 2022, is going to be about democratizing opportunities and democratizing opportunities to something similar to what Sabih is doing in his organization, which is around an AI-based tool, and it's probably the same tool, Sabih, as well, which is about making sure that our employees feel taken care of, feel like the company is enabling them to achieve their aspirations. And I'll also kind of finish with one last learning from sessions we've been having with Deloitte to understand trends in the market as well. The movement of HR processes, the core being performance, is moving to the core being careers, right? And that's where I think as L&D also we'll need to shift focus around how do we enable our employees to achieve their aspirations, right? And that's where you'll be able to engage, truly retain and develop our next generation of employees.
Thanks for sharing that example of the ways. I mean, it's sometimes it just, even it took me a moment. I also had my share of examples because I have a daughter who's growing up and I see the choices that she's making. So that's a different story for another day. But coming back to here, I also wanted to ask every one of you if you have anything around, with these skills happening. What's happening is that at a bigger picture, colleges and institutions, they are not upgrading their skills because it has two purposes: socializing among the people, students, and also it is a place where your skills get certified in the form of a degree. Now, when they come to the organization, then the organization has to reboot them because the world is changing more rapidly than the college curriculum is changing. So I also want to understand, with this rapid scaling up, especially in the larger companies around upskilling, reskilling, curriculum, everything in place, do you think it will also open the roles for more set of people, diverse set of people coming in? Instead of saying an engineer, maybe I can get a graduate, a history graduate, as long as they are going to be certified in these skills on the machine learning. And the reason why I say is that, see, look at Amazon, which is very big in machine learning. So the head of global machine learning, a lady called Ali Miller, she's not an engineer. So that's what brings me to this question. So if anyone of you has
Sandeep, if I may just add, there is a common line of thought or a statement that we all sort of use every now and then in DBS, which is that the next CEO for DBS may not be a banker. And there's a lot of weight in that statement, because I think the lines between skills and experiences are getting very blurred thanks to technology and thanks to all the enablement tools that exist. And I think to the earlier points being made, even the workforce that is available is also not that traditional cookie cutter as was the case 20-25 years ago in our situation. So I think somewhere down the line, it is in the organization's best interest to shape and shape the ask of their talent needs along with what is available in the market and what the future of technology would throw at each employee and each employment category, which necessarily may not be a traditional approach.
So are you seeing some signs, any one of you?
Yes, absolutely. DBS has a lot of AI, even if I look in HR, right from, recruitment tools to predictive analytics, everything. And we're not having traditional folks come and do job. I mean, in my team, for example, there are two people who are not HR background at all. There are people one is from an audit background and the other person is coming from business. So we are seeing.
So thanks for sharing this. And how are you seeing for the employees? What is their responsibility for employees, especially on the digital side? They need to get a digital fluency, even if they don't have to be experts in digital. So are you seeing any resistance from them, or how are you addressing or concerns or anxiety?
See, any change that there is of this kind will have some resistance and some, cut over time period, as I call it. But I think the balance or the proof of the pudding would be how well we balance, and going back to my earlier example of Lakshmi Vilas and DBS, it's chalk and cheese, not only from the culture standpoints, which is the start and foremost of any amalgamation, but even processes, systems. They have universal bankers. We have people who are specialized. We've been largely a corporate bank. They're largely a mass banking institution. So there is, of course, both sides of the spectrum. They are more agile. They're more go to market speed, execution. All of that is top of the charts. You tell them to raise deposits worth lakh of rupees, it is done in 8 hours. Whereas we are so process driven, we will take approval. So there is that natural tension, and I think in any change management as it is, I think it's the balancing act. And for us, the biggest thing is to infuse processes and talent both ways, which is the tech folks sort of going and amalgamating themselves on the other side of the fence, and the universal bankers coming here and teaching the trick of the trade to make our folks more agile and nimble.
And do you think that this upskilling and reskilling happening internally, organizations have developed the expertise? Do you think the talent pool that the organizations are now intaking or would be intaking would become more diverse?
Organizations would become more diverse, but to your earlier point of have we arrived on the upskilling, reskilling journey? No, this is like 15 years ago when everybody used to talk about diversity. So it is right now a very fashionable thing to talk about. Everyone's talking about it. I think to start to talk about is actually putting your journey in the right stead. But have organizations truly arrived there right now? I think it's a journey, Sandeep, in my mind.
Sure. I mean, it's different markets are different.
Yes. For example, Singapore and DBS, they always believe that roles may go, but people don't. And that's a philosophy we live by. We don't believe in redundancies and retrenchment. The R word is forbidden in the DBS context. So Singapore, for example, there is a lot of work that is done when branches were being optimized, where, your tellers converted into customer service executives. Your virtual teller machines came in, so you had virtual relationship managers and so on and so forth. So various countries and various organizations are at a different stage, I suppose. But it's a concept being talked more about right now. That's my belief. Versus we really arriving at the end of it.
Thanks, Nagina. Anyone
For
else?
sure, we are.
I will add one
away
point.
from.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll complete. So I'm saying for sure it's a long journey, and we are on the way somewhere. One of the things that we've experimented and is going very well is building these communities of practice. So people of similar interest within the organization, they're coming together and they're learning together, sharing, equipping each other, and then building awareness. And so these are opportunities where employees from very diverse background come together, join the community if that is of their interest, if that's the passion, that's the area that they want to build careers in, and then they work together, learn and experience it. And if sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't like it, and they move from one community to the other. But that is opening up more opportunities and possibilities both for the individuals and for us as an organization.
Yeah. And I think it will become necessary because a lot of the baseline work between now and the next 3 years will get automated. What we experience now, and that will ensure that for organizations, if they want to differentiate, the people need to have interdisciplinary intelligence.
Yeah,
because you can't be just into a silo. So once you have interdisciplinary intelligence, then you'll be able to move forward. And I think that's a valid point that you had. Rajiv, you want to chime in?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to add on that point which you said that people coming from the different backgrounds, like someone from history background coming to the engineering side. While every industry, every sector will respond to this particular part because of the crunch of the talent differently, but the companies like Larsen and Toubro or even the Tata Motors, those who are in the core sector, especially the core engineering sector, for them, reskilling and upskilling challenge is at entirely different ball game. Let us take one example. I will just try to explain this point with one example. If we look back around 10 or 15 years back, most of the infrastructure project size was probably 500 to 600 crore rupees. and that itself was a big thing actually. Bagging a project of order of the 500 or 6 crore was a big thing. But now if we see actually what is the average size of the project, the metro rails, these kind of project runs in the tune of 3,000 to 4,000 crore. Bullet train projects runs in the tune of 20,000 to 30,000 crore. The scale is humongous. And actually there is no person, no talent is available in the market. It is not that we cannot buy or we can bring from some other place. It is simply not available. So the challenge of reskilling and upskilling is entirely different scale. So maybe from the non-engineering background, people coming to these kind of roles, probably it will be a big ask. I'm not saying that it is not possible, but probably it will be a big ask. And for companies like L&T, these challenges are very high because we are now in the metros, we are now in the bullet train, those kind of projects we are bagging. So how L&T is actually handling this issue? We have created a competency development center at Kanchipuram near Chennai. And if you go that center, if you visit anyone who can visit to those places, actually, there is a proper railway station fixed there, made. It is 600-meter plus track is there. A railway station is there, a signaling system is there. Then there is a track chain, shunting lines are there, and all kind of things which is needed to train the people, needed to upskill or reskill the technicians and the engineers are set up there. A huge investment. It's not a small investment actually.
I think I agree with your points. Sorry, just because the time is short, so I will just have to wrap it up.
So that I wanted to add that point here.
No, I agree with you because I think it depends on the industry. The change is definitely happening. It will be sequential because the examples that, the role models that are coming in are more in terms of tech or service oriented. For example, actually, I learned it from my daughter only. So the Amazon machine learning is a non-engineer element. So she told me, because she's a liberal arts, she told me CRED is run by a philosophy graduate. He's managing a team of engineers. But I understand your point. Infrastructure and all will have a different level.
Yes, so yes, you rightly said role, and then the industry and the sector
intensity
will take it.
So just to, now that we're at the end, so thanks for all the inputs that we got. I just want to end with, because it's been last 18 months have been pretty intense from March of last year, if you look at it. But what's also happened is that learning and development has got a seat at the executive table, and that has got, up, like, if you look at the LinkedIn workplace learning report, almost it's been a 3x jump from what it was before March 2020. So looking back at that journey, all of you have rolled out. That time you were not very clear how the future will pan out, the next 18 months will pan out. It was good effort basis as a team, community moving forward. But now with the benefit of hindsight 2020, some of the audience people who are hearing and think of rolling out some of the upskill or reskilling initiatives in their company, what is the one piece of advice quickly each of the panelists would like to give, and also one piece not to do? That's optional. So anyone, if you both, great. Otherwise,
sure.
Good.
Yeah. So Sandeep, very quickly, I'll just.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes.
Point. Absolutely. So see, point number one is when we look at serious business challenges, there is a lot of insight in terms of how do we look at upskill and reskill basis the industry. The idea is that we can continue a person in a particular role and give him or her different experiences, which really increases the breadth and width of the experience. And that's how the value add to the business, right? So this is point number one. Second, any learning intervention should ideally be looked at more from a journey or a pathway perspective, which sustains for a longer period of time. It should not be a knee-jerk reaction. It should be a well thought of intervention. So this is a quick 2 bits from my side, Sandeep.
Thanks, Jaladhi.
I think I'll want to just quickly chime in here.
Yes.
The one thing in terms of hindsight that I think ideally organizations should start very early on would be create opportunities to build critical experiences internally. This could be by way of programs which allow maybe a data analyst that's working currently in an HR ops team to apply the same skills, but in a marketing context. That allows that multidimensional perspective to come in, and that's quite useful. The one thing that probably not to do would be to assume that one size fits all. we're living in the age of hyper customization, and that, as long as that keeps reflecting in our talent and L&D strategies, I think that works quite well. So no one size fits all.
No, thanks. Thanks for bringing this topic again, because interdisciplinary intelligence is something I also think is very critical in today's times. So we'll move on to Prajakta. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I think so. One thing to do is ensure the linkages are very strong with business, with data, with employee aspirations. So that's the first thing. If it is not interlinked, it doesn't work. What not to do is also ensuring that you're not bombarding beyond a point, right? The same audience with multiple different things. So I think the focus that's required in truly building skills, we ensure we create that space. So that's the to do and not to do.
Thanks, Prajakta. Would like to
in our zest to train and to help the organization learn and evolve and build these skills, sometimes we tend to miss, and the organization and leadership tends to miss, the fact that learning is no one capsule which will solve all problems. It has to be looked in conjunction with the other interventions that are happening in the organization, the culture that we have in the place, the ambition of the organization, and the state at which the organization in its own evolution is. So it has to be looked in tandem, and it cannot be just, taken as one Ramban which will solve all the problems.
Thanks, Sabih.
One point, if time permits, I will add here is that, especially for the L&D professionals, that from the learner viewpoint, the work-life balance is coming in a very problematic area, because I have seen in many organizations and many practices where training is actually pushed either the late in the evening or even Saturday and Sunday. That poor fellow has only that many hours to actually work and spend the time with the family. But this is a practice of late. I am seeing that it is getting pushed into 8 o'clock, means late in the evening and in the Saturday, Sunday. And then if we are expecting that, okay, that the effectiveness of the training or the quality of the training will be up to the mark, probably that is a big ask.
So maybe that kind of valid point. I think you're making a very valid point. But I suppose the market might address it, because a lot of the younger talent will choose one firm over the other. And these could be one of the criteria, even if you're a big firm. So this over the next 12-18 months, we might see some trends.
We might.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Quickly, Nagina or Jaladhi. Nagina, you want to add something?
So the only point I'd like to add here is, one to do thing is that the new normal is definitely not going to be about being conventional. Clearly not. Whether it is upskilling, reskilling, hiring, looking at talent, assessments, careers, so on and so forth. I think that's a huge change that industries, people, and the blend of old timers versus the new generation coming in, and all of that will need to be managed. And I think the other point to my earlier point is that it's just not upskilling and reskilling because it's the fad. It is upskilling and reskilling if it makes business sense. So I think that's the watch out.
Absolutely. Jaladhi?
Yeah, I think one last input here would be in terms of, and I agree with what Nagina said, understanding what really makes sense, not to plunge just because it's a fad, and also looking at how it impacts the overall business value by each of the learner. There is always this a nice kind of a balance between what the person's career aspiration, which is versus what the organization's aspiration in terms of adding value. So this should be balanced. I think that should take care. Yeah.
Thanks for that. And actually, that also sums up that in today's world, it's from a nice to have, it's a need to have mindset that has come around these two things. And also, what Nagina just mentioned is that it's not a trend anymore. It's a survival strategy if the companies and employees want to sustain their growth in future. So with that, it's end to today's session. Thanks everyone for taking time out and sharing your experiences and insights. And thanks everyone in the audience for being with us.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Sandeep Kaul. What an absolutely fabulous panel discussion. So many learnings, and like Mr. Kaul mentioned, that the last 18 months have really been nothing that one could ever have imagined. And we've really grown so much in the last months. What we could have thought of the growth digitally to happen in a decade has really just happened in a span of few months there. So all of you spoke about the various challenges that you've had, spoke about the do's and don'ts for other organizations that are learning and listening right here. Yes, upskilling and reskilling initiatives are more than needed in organizations today. So really, it has become a survival strategy more than anything else. Thank you once again for sharing your thoughts with us. It's been a pleasure listening in to all our panelists. And for all our delegates, let me mention that we have a lot of excitement in store for you, a lot happening right here. It's time to network with peers. It's time to network with our partners. It's also time to learn from our leaders on how we can take our L&D strategies to an all new level. For now, very shortly, we'll be back with our next session on developing managers while transforming business. So stay tuned.